So here's the next result for the Devons, and what another very good class.
Beef production has had a variable press in the recent past. From vilifying red meat as being bad for you, and there's quite a lot of grain being fed to cattle. Methane production, the old the effervescent cows news, which is nothing new. Ruminant animals tend to do this sort of thing. So this report, What's the Beef, is just about trying to bust a few of the myths. We want to look at what's the optimum land use, and in many cases beef and sheep production is a perfectly valid thing to do on land that is not otherwise available for human crops. The National Trust has got a very large vested interest in beef and sheep production, for that matter, because the Trust's landholding is 250,000 hectares. So 200,000 hectares is farmed, and of that, 160,000 hectares is basically managed by grazing, and beef cattle are the major component of that grazing. We commissioned a report on different aspects of beef production, largely because there started big rumblings about the fact that beef was contributing majorly to climate change through greenhouse gas emissions. And the problem as we saw it was that all beef systems are all being lumped together, and beef is not the same depending on what inputs go into it. That's different types of feed, how land is managed, and even the breeds of cattle. So there's a huge variability. A lot of the beef that the Trust's farms are involved with is largely reared on grass with limited supplementary feed, and therefore we felt that it was important to try and differentiate the different systems and just see how well our farms fared against other systems.
So we have a map of Burrow Farm. Exeter would be the west of us, and we're just situated on the edge of Broadclyst, for a total of around about 350 acres. And when we took over the tenancy 5 years ago, a very small proportion, probably about 10% of the farm was in pasture, and that's highlighted by these fields that are in green. The River Clyst flows through the farm. Yeah. So we've reinstated the floodplain back into pasture. And that helps to prevent soil wash and soil erosion, and also obviously provides the necessary pasture for our increasing livestock numbers.
So you've gone from 10% grass on the farm up to 40%, is that right?
We have, which fits with the livestock we're running on the farm at the moment. That's our small dairy heifer ruminant unit, and of course our main enterprise, the Red Devon beef. And we're running a conventional sort of arable system on the remaining land. And within the arable rotation, we also grow some winter forage crops, which provides necessary food for the winter for the Devons.
So the deal is we're just putting up a strip across here to manage this.
No, that's right.
Paddock grazing then.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is just give them a section of the field at a time, so that the section that we fence them into, they graze efficiently.
Neil and Sally have adopted a paddock system whereby individual grass fields are subdivided using very simple electric fencing to enable fresh areas of pasture to be given to the cattle on a regular basis. And what this does is it allows the cattle to graze grass and clover at the most nutritious stage, so they get optimum value out of that pasture.
There you go.
Thank you, Rob.
This is a lay which is going down for what, 10 years or so?
It is down for 10 years. It's a field that's in arable reversion under the higher level stewardship scheme that we're a part of, which means we've taken this field out of arable production and back into pasture.
It's obviously a productive lay mix you've got down here.
It's relatively productive, yes, and obviously with the clovers in there will help fix the nitrogen, and also will improve the organic matter of the soil.
Sure. And you're not actually needing any artificial fertiliser on here at all at the moment, is that right?
It's unlikely with the farmyard manure that we're producing now and the grazing that we'll be putting artificial fertiliser on this land. What we're effectively doing is converting grass into meat. Could I have another steak there, Rob?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's a very cheap forage,
And there's
So-
you don't need any cereals, any concentrates.
No, for these particular animals we wouldn't need any cereals,
Yeah.
and we're able to have a low cost of production.
I mean, what you've got here is a really efficient system for capturing sunlight and converting it into human edible protein.
Solar powered beef.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I'll sell you some in a minute, okay?
Excellent. Some more.
One of the interesting things about flagging up the importance of livestock production, and beef in particular, is the way that it fits into mixed farming. We've long held the view that mixed farms, a bit of arable, a bit of livestock, and increasingly a bit of horticulture are a helpful way forward as opposed to polarised, simpler systems, because they tend to be a bit more resilient. And the reason why we think that is that they offer great opportunities for people to add value to products which perhaps they wouldn't otherwise. And mixed farms tend to be able to replenish soil organic matter with manures, fairly obvious really, but it's got to go somewhere. It's actually just a sensible way of nutrient cycling actually, and Borough Farm is a good example of where Neil and Sally have worked that out to their advantage.
Our business has to be profitable. We're direct marketing our beef, we're producing quality forage, and we're really pleased with the quality beef that we're able to produce from our pedigree Red Devons.
You've got the right herd, the right grassland, the right farm setup, but where people sometimes struggle is adding value to the whole carcass. There's usually a problem with either forequarter or rear end or whatever it is. How do you overcome that? How do you get people to sort of buy the whole carcass?
Well, we've developed some good markets for our mince and casserole steak and shin with local restaurants, and we've also started making our own range of beef burgers. We go to various local farmers markets. We've booked in to do 30 different festivals this summer.
At the end of the day, it's a delight to be able to link our beef with the consumer, and in essence we're linking people with food.
The key findings of our research are that farms on National Trust land tend to fall within the modest carbon efficiency categories, but efficiency of production of a kilo of beef is one question. Another question, which I think is more relevant, is to try and think about what's the optimum land use of a given piece of land. We're not saying that beef production per se is without limitations. Quite the opposite. There is an argument to say that we can afford to have good quality beef, perhaps not eat so much of it, but be more aware of where it's from. It's just recognising when it can be done well and within reasonable sustainable limits that it's something which we can be proud of. We're learning all the time and trying to exchange best practice, and no better way to do that than between our active farmers. And Borough Farm is a very good example of trying to optimise grass growth into edible protein, basically from good soil management. And this takes us into the whole arena of agroecology, which is basically making sure that agriculture is within the capability of its environment. And the National Trust has got its part to play to show and encourage good practice. So we've got to think a little bit differently as we go into the future and take a bit more note of the biology, not just above but below the soil as well.